So what can people do? Well, vote, vote, vote is still my thing, right? I mean, no matter what, and no matter what the barriers are, no matter, 2 forms of ID, just go find it out and go get those 2 forms of ID. They change the location of the voting place for you. Just go find out where the new one is. Somebody's doing something crazy at the voting place, call Kristen. Kristen's got the voter protection hotline, which I'm sure she's going to give us all, because everybody needs to have that if you're standing in line and the electricity gets pulled right at your, predominantly Black precinct, right? You got to call that number and get lawyers on it right away. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is to the point of making people and our existing political leaders feel it. People do need to call. People do need to call. It's harder when you're voting, when you're in COVID, because you can't go to the district office and show up, but you can still email them. You can still call them. People need to be getting calls right now, and not just red target states. We sort of make a mistake, for those of us who are sitting kind of happy in New York or California, or me in Chicago, that we sit in these blue states. And yes, I don't need to call folks. You still need to call your blue state officials, because they need to hear it too. And they need to be able to walk into that hearing in the Senate Judiciary to say, my phone just blew up because everybody in my state is upset about this too, right? I mean, they need to have that strength. To Kristen's point about giving them strength, that comes from us. And it doesn't matter whether we're in a blue state or a red state. Everybody needs to do that, is to burn up the phone lines, burn up the email lines, with this message right now about this process and how unhappy we are as the American people with this process.
I'm going to back up what Tina said. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to call. My father used to be a politician, very low level local official. But if you got on his answering machine, if you gummed up his phone lines, he would notice. Certainly in COVID, one of the things that we have is that politicians really like, licking their finger and sticking it in the wind, and they can't because everybody's sick. So the only way that they can get that feeling of what voters are saying is through their phones. And again, Tina's so right. It is so important, if you sit in a blue state, to call your blue state senators to make sure they put their courage, the sticking post, on these issues. I live in New York. I like to leave messages with Kristen Gillibrand that are basically like, I wonder what AOC would do right now. Hey, when can she run for office? Like, straight up, right? Because that's what I need Kristen Gillibrand to do right now. I don't use my real voice either. It's great. But
you just told on yourself. You just Kevin Duranted yourself, Ellie. Like, everybody knows now. The whole this is crazy. I'm cutting this. This is great.
But, okay, you really probably should. My point is that I call my, let me start. I call my blue state senators like Chuck Schumer and Kristen Gillibrand and try to encourage them to take some of the more aggressive positions, because they never will if they don't hear it from voters in their own constituencies.
So I was at the court for almost every single day of the Kavanaugh hearing. And you know what? A curveball kind of came in the middle of the process. The Senate Judiciary was about to vote, and then they decided to slow things down, and they did that. They spent a week doing that FBI report, and it didn't yield. It didn't turn out the way that we wanted, but you know what? You just never know. I think it's important that we not give up on this fight, that we apply pressure to our senators, make them deeply uncomfortable if they've taken the position that they are signing on. Speak out and protest the idea of a sham hearing of 2 or 3 weeks. Usually Supreme Court confirmation hearings take like 2 months. We're talking about a lifetime position on our nation's highest court. So for people who are listening, I'm going to ask you to pull out a pen or take out your phone and plug in 2 numbers. The first number is 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. That's how you can reach your senator. Call them and let them know that you object. You object. Let the voters be heard. Let's wait and let the voters be heard. The second number that I'm going to ask you to plug into your phone is 866-OUR-VOTE, 866-OUR-VOTE. If you are at home and you're wondering, gosh, all right, they're saying I should vote. I don't know. What do I do in the midst of this pandemic? We are working 7 days a week to empower voters with all the information that they need to get out and absentee vote, to go out and vote during early voting, to go out and vote successfully on election day, to register to vote. It's not too late. It's not too late. So call 866-OUR-VOTE. And then the last thing I'll just say, Angela, because I just want people to understand how real this is, even something as basic and fundamental as Miranda rights, right? Like when you get arrested, the cops read you your rights. This woman even takes issue with the idea of the Miranda warning that typically gets issued to people. She's said that it is over enforcement of a constitutional norm, and that Miranda warnings inevitably exclude from evidence confessions freely given. This is a nominee who would turn our country on its head. We have to keep fighting until the bitter, bitter end.
So I'm going to repeat a lot of what everybody else said, but I'll say it slightly differently. Look, I think that the fight for me that this is like the Affordable Care Act, right? Where Mitch McConnell and Republicans thought they had the votes. They thought they had the votes until they didn't. And so that's why we have to fight to the end. Kristen said, there was a 1 week delay in Kavanaugh. It didn't change the outcome. A 1 week delay here could change the outcome. If we're able to at least push this debate, push this vote past the election, if the election results turn out the way some of us hope they will, it could be a whole different ballgame, right? So we have to do step by step. The first thing is to call your senators. And absolutely, Tina, I think part of this is some people don't even know. You're sitting in Chicago. Dick Durbin has not said that he's going to oppose Amy Coney Barrett yet. How is it that the number 2 Democrat in the Senate has not taken a firm position yet? So you don't even know where your senator might be. So you should call your senator. You should call both of your senators. When you're done with that, you should call your friends and make sure they call their senators, right? This is part of this, and then do it again the next day. They have to keep hearing from you over and over and over again. And if people feel safe, if there's social distancing, if depending on where you live, there are going to be in-person protests, because this is how upset people are about what Republicans are doing to rush through this sham process to confirm a justice, to rule in these election cases for Donald Trump, and to rule to strike down the Affordable Care Act. And the last piece here that I think is so important is the storytelling. I think that's what makes a big difference in the Affordable Care Act, that makes a big difference generally. We've talked about a lot of different ways that the Supreme Court affects you. I guarantee you, whatever issue you care about, whatever struggle you're living with, whatever challenge you've overcome, the Supreme Court has either made it better or makes it worse. And with Amy Coney Barrett, it's going to be worse. And so finding ways to tell your story, especially people with the 130 million people with pre-existing conditions, the number growing by the day because COVID is going to be a pre-existing condition, those people have to start telling their stories, start showing up in different places, because a lot of these senators are still doing town halls, they're still doing debates, and they need to feel your presence. And they need to know that this process is not over, haven't given up the fight, and we're going to take this not only to Republicans, but to the Democrats too, and tell them to step up. We need Democrats to show us how this process is different from any other, because it is. And we need our Democrats to show just a fraction of the fight that Ellie's asking them for.